And we've been exploring some of the concepts in this book. And Dr. Weil also has a book about mind over medication. So this is obviously a topic that is really important today in a world where we are sort of over medicating ourselves or being over medicated. And what we're finding out is that our mind is much more effective in healing than just about any drug that could possibly be. So, we're going to talk about how a happy frame of mind is not only a positive thing in your health. It's almost a requisite to maintain good health. So, as Dr. Rankin has been talking about, is the idea that sometimes pain and illness goes beyond what you do physically. That and she has come across numerous people who do all the right things physically. They take the right, they're eating the right diet, and they're taking the right supplements, and they're doing the exercise, and they're doing meditation, and yet they are still feeling ill. They still have, physical illness, and that what drives that is their world, their relationship to their world, and which ultimately ends up being the frame of mind that they are in. So she says, if the health of the body requires health of the mind, what do we call this kind of health? It's a kind of health that our healthcare system doesn't even have a language to describe. And the common definition of the word health doesn't take into account whether you're fulfilled at work, or happy in your marriage, or surrounded by a network of people who love you. And she explains that when she was in med school, she was taught that there are two kinds of people, sick people and well people. Sick people have something wrong with them on a physical examination, or their lab tests come back and they're, considered ill, and then you medicate them, or you manage them, in a hospital, or give them physical lifestyle changes such as exercise and diet, or stopping smoking or things like that, and that's done to make them feel less sick, and that's what the medical profession considers to be their job. And then with well people, when they have normal physical exams and normal lab results, then the job is to try to keep them well by giving them education about good nutrition and exercise and all of the wellness-inducing behaviors that are important. But, and this is an important but, while medical technology is advancing at a rapid-fire pace, and our understanding of what prevents disease continues to grow, our society is increasingly becoming obese, hypertensive, and diabetic, increasingly suffering from heart attacks, strokes, and cancers, or doped up on drugs for anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. I mean, I look around and it's like depression and bipolar are like an epidemic. In my family alone, I have 3 relatives, in my immediate family, who suffer from either bipolar or different kinds of depression. it really is. And there's others I know that are suffering, and they've either not been diagnosed or they have been diagnosed, and we're only just beginning to understand uh, what this is and how to deal with it. And unfortunately, part of that understanding, uh, when it used to be that behavioral therapy and talk therapy were the main approach. Now it's looked at as a neurological imbalance, a chemical imbalance, and so that's treated with more drugs. But that's a subject that we'll get to probably next week. We'll talk about that. But right now, I want to continue with uh, the happiness factor. So there's another category of patients, Dr. Rankin is saying, that are not technically sick, but they're not exactly well either. Uh, all of their vital signs are good, and their physical tests come back well, uh, but they don't feel vital. They don't feel great. And she says there's an epidemic of patients like this. They feel depressed and anxious, tossing and turning at night, suffering from decreased libido. Maybe they put on weight. Or maybe they numb out with a variety of addictions. And they have vague symptoms such as muscle aches and back and neck pain and uh, gastrointestinal disturbances, headaches, things like that. And they feel like something is terribly wrong. And they go to the doctor trying to find out what it might be, and the doctor says, all looks good. But the patient doesn't feel well. And that's because the doctors are trained to find biochemical reasons for everything. And quite often there's not a biochemical explanation for how these people are feeling. So they can spend a lot of time going to doctors who can't really help them. Or if they do, they treat them with antidepressants and other, kinds of drugs, instead of trying to help them deal with the real issue. So many of these patients who are technically well but feel sick are suffering from the physiological consequences of repetitive stress responses that progressively break down the body. So unless the underlying stress is dealt with, these patients often become physically sick. And the medical establishment doesn't seem to understand or recognize this. And they suggest that these symptoms that you're feeling are all in your head. And it's sort of right, it is in your head, but it certainly can, as we have seen, translate into the body. So, how does a feeling or a thought translate into physical effects in the body? So she gives an example here of fear. A doctor tells you you've got 3 months to live, or someone injects you with something they warn you will have unpleasant side effects, or maybe something not even that dramatic. Maybe you're afraid your wife is going to leave you, or your boss is going to fire you, or you won't be able to pay the bills, or your dream won't come true, or everybody will reject you because you're unlovable. These are powerful thoughts. And your conscious mind knows you're frightened. But the lizard brain, as they call it, the hypothalamus, doesn't tell the difference between, abstract fear thought and real, live survival threat. And so your lizard brain thinks you're in a fight or flight mode, and this sets off a stress response, flipping on the sympathetic nervous system, shutting down your immune system, and getting you ready to run away from danger. So when your body's in the middle of a stress response, your body's self-maintenance and all self-repair functions come to a screeching halt. So these stress responses were meant to be triggered only very rarely. The healthy body is supposed to be in a relaxed state of physiological rest most of the time. So if you're a caveman living in a happy tribe of people, you would only be expected to run from a cave bear once in a blue moon. The rest of the time you'd be gathering berries and hanging out at the campfire and making little cave babies. Of course, our caveman ancestors didn't live very long because of real and present dangers they faced every day. Dangers we're largely protected from because of the modern luxuries we have, such as shelter and food. But, our modern life has its own perils, as we know. And things like loneliness and unhappy relationships and work stress and financial stress and anxiety and depression, they result in thoughts and feelings in the forebrain that repetitively trigger this stress response that shuts down the body. Feelings like fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, resentment, and other negative emotions trigger the HPA axis. Whether or not your body is in danger, your mind believes you are. So your hypothalamus is activated and releases I can't pronounce this, but it releases a sort of a response in the body, stimulating the pituitary gland and causing it to secrete prolactin, growth hormone, and several kinds of hormones here, which stimulate the adrenal gland and cause it to release cortisol, which in turn is responsible for helping the body maintain homeostasis when the brain signals a threat. So when this is activated, it turns on the fight or flight response, and the secretion of these hormones leads to a variety of metabolic changes all over the body. Blood vessels traveling to the stomach and the hands and the feet that constrict, while vessels traveling to the heart and large muscle groups and brain dilate. So you begin to, your blood vessels begin to dilate, and so you're getting less blood flow. Your respiratory rate and your bronchi dilate, allowing more oxygen in, and your muscles become tense and ready to sprint away from the perceived danger. You get an increase of stomach acid and digestive enzymes decrease, and this often leads to esophageal contractions, diarrhea, or constipation and inflammation. Cortisol suppresses your immune system to reduce the inflammation that would accompany any wound that attack might inflict. Your reproduction gets shut off, so there's no sex, and basically your body ignores things like sleeping, digesting, and reproducing, and instead focuses on running, breathing, thinking, and delivering oxygen and energy in order to keep you safe. And when your body is facing a physical threat, these changes help you fight or flee the threat. But when the threat exists only in your mind and the body doesn't realize there's no bodily threat, over time, when the stress response is repetitively triggered, nature's biological response winds up actually doing more harm than good. So as a result, the body can't relax and repair what inevitably gets ill if not maintained by self-repair mechanisms. So organs get damaged. The cancer cells we naturally make every day, which usually get blasted away by the immune system, start to proliferate. The effects of chronic wear and tear on the human body take their toll, and we wind up sick. But it doesn't have to be this way. The body knows how to relax with the counterbalancing relaxation response. When the conscious forebrain thinks positive thoughts and feels things like love, connection, intimacy, pleasure, and hope, the hypothalamus stops triggering the stress response. And when you feel optimistic and hopeful, loved and supported, in the flow in your professional or creative life, spiritually nourished, or sexually connected to another person, the relaxation response takes the place of the stress response.